What is the stupidest thing anyone has ever said to you? Write your opinion about this video in the comments and share your story. Story 1. Let's try something completely different. Attack from the rear just like the Trojan horse, my manager's boss. We were discussing marketing strategies to grow business. I said our sales agents in the targeted area did not seem to be driven by our current bonus structure. Story 2. I had a friend who was convinced we could start a business by creating a device that lets you pee while standing at a bar without going to the toilet. I did inform him that there are adult diapers, but he had something more intricate in mind, like a catheter. Meh, that was a really stupid conversation. Story 3. Being a cashier, people tell you anything and everything. Someone told me she was just getting off work after a 16 HR shift. I was like, oh, that's rough. She followed it up by saying she worked 200 hours a week, being dead serious. How does one have a scheduled job and not know that there's only 168 hours within a week? I mean, unless in another dimension days are 28.5 hours long. I'm still not sure. I didn't correct her, but she complained about working so much, and I just let her talk. Story 4. The quarterback of my high school asked the physics teacher, if here in the US our cars go miles per hour, over in Europe do they go miles per kilometer? He actually wasn't that much of an airhead, just a brain fart moment. While that one is my favorite, this may be objectively the dumbest thing I've ever heard. A girl who somehow graduated with me once said, Obama is half black, half Muslim. Man, am I glad to be out of that small, racist town. Story 5. 9 years ago, there was a girl in high school who swore up and down that North was in front of her no matter what direction she was facing. North is always ahead. I still have her expression engraved into my brain when the teacher showed her a compass, for what I'd assume was her very first time seeing one. Wonder how she's doing today, LOL. Story 6. Our freedoms are being taken away because it's not legal to shoot your neighbor's dog for crapping on your lawn. This is my sister-in-law, who lives in a house in the woods and doesn't have a lawn. Close second comes from someone at an STA event who said that the reason they didn't have many miscarriages in the Middle Ages is because belly dancing was more common. Story 7. When I was struggling with my faith and kinda thinking to look to pastors to get some inspiration, a special pastor particularly invited to our church to give a teaching. Deadass said with a confident look at the crowd, if the earth is round, why doesn't the water that is on the other side fall away from earth? I don't remember what his teaching was about, but I haven't had any blind respect for any pastor ever since. Story 8. I've been to a pro-Palestinian protest and heard a protester screaming at your typical Jew with a big hat, suit with zitzit under it, that the Jews have no connection to the Middle East, and in particular the Levant, Israel, he continued, and claimed that all Jews originated from Poland and Russia. It amazes me every time how ignorant some people can be. Story 9. Once upon a time I was taking an outside break at work. There was the big, ugly gal smoking her 15th cigarette of the day, only 10 a.m. She had a coughing fit, and when it was finally over, she started complaining about the air quality in Southern California. Someone needs to do something about this crappy air quality. I gave her the nickname Tupac's Say Day, like the rapper that was shot. Story 10. My baby sister, who was probably 18-19 at the time, was friends with a very toxic couple. They essentially ransacked my sister's first apartment and tried to sell her her own stuff. I was telling to report the theft to the police, but she responded with, just because they do bad things doesn't mean they are bad people. She finally charged her tune on them a few months later. It's been about a decade, and I still use that quote to her. Story 11. In high school during an English literature class where we were studying Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream, a young man raised his arm and then proclaimed to the entire class, "We've been studying Shakespeare for months. What's this guy's first name?" I'll never forget this moment because that young man was me. I'm 43, and 26 plus years later, I can still feel the instantaneous embarrassment and wonder if my classmates still think I'm the dumbest person alive. Story 12. I had a friend attend our local Renaissance festival with us one year as she had never gone before. This woman, in her 30s and with multiple degrees, asked me if the mermaids we had just seen were real. It was a couple of ladies in a 5'8" tall, glass-fronted tank wearing costumes. I don't judge people for asking questions, as it's much better to ask and find out the truth than to be scared to ask and be ignorant forever. But I sure had to bite my cheek when I answered her. Story 13. Ultimately, humans are just animals. A horny dog would fuck another dog in the ass if he's horny enough. My two girl cats hump each other when they're in the mood and in heat. But humans need to give identity to all that shit for some reason. Just fucking get off however helps and get on with your day. It's just a sexual release for pleasure. And you could have a fictional sexual attraction that's different from reality sexual attraction. I'm sure there are people who find things like pissing or bukkake hot in like hentai, but disgusting in real life. And that's because hentai could suspend belief of the reality and create something different from reality. But then you have people who feel like they have to link reality and fiction. I think that same thing can easily apply towards like lowly versus actual pedophilia. Lowly versus pedophilia is a good example too, because like it's also one of those topics that's extremely polarizing. But like ultimately, it's easy to see someone can easily be suspending belief to find lowly attractive in a strictly role-playing sense, no different from going on a killing rampage in GTA, have a perfectly complete separation of reality and fiction, and find it hot. Then they fully know the morality of how wrong that stuff is as applied towards real children. And with trans, by believing that they're a woman, because they relate to the woman in gender swap porn or whatever they find hot, they need to make that their reality too, and they want a daddy to pound them like female Naruto got pounded, and they can't get that. Unless they can convince others they're a woman physically, mentally, or even best case they do get that and find out it doesn't live up to the porn and go through a crisis. Story 14. Recently a Muslim guy and I had a convo when they were looking for the moon prior to Eid. So just for bullshit and blay talk, I asked him whether the recent eclipse had maybe any effect on the sighting. He confidently answered and said no, it's only the moon moving in front of the sun. However, it would be a huge problem if they bumped into one another because then the sun would burst and shoot flaming stars into the earth. We will have a real problem then. TBH. I was looking for more in line with the end of days prophecy of the eclipse, marking a cross over the US, spelling the end of your days. This was remarkably worse and better than I hoped for. Story 15. My ex and I divorced in February 2017 because she was cheating on me, which she vehemently denied because we were in the military, and she'd get in trouble for it. I found out she was pregnant and due in August 2017. She no shit maintained that A, I wasn't the father, and B, she didn't fuck anyone else while we were married. Now I knew the baby couldn't be mine because we hadn't been intimate since the summer of 2016. So, unless she was setting a new record for longest pregnancy, it wasn't mine. IDK something about the whole thing was reminiscent of that Shaggy Wasn't Me song, which I found hilarious. Story 16. A friend of my GF said this after learning about my educational background career. Your family must be so proud of you. I can only imagine the challenges and dangers they took on to give you a better life in this country and leave poverty behind. A first-generation graduate and even a post-grad degree. Context. Both my parents have specialized degrees and came to the country where we live by employer sponsorship. We were, fortunately, never remotely close to being poor. It was also my second or third time seeing this dude, and he has a bit of a white savior complex. Story 17. My mom and dad live in the country. Our dog Flash is old and has been attacked a few times. Our other dog Boss is a smaller dog. I asked my mom if they had their rabies shots. She asked why. I said so they don't get rabid and bite anyone. I would hate for them to have to put one of them down like an old yeller. She said, that's just from a book, and I just left. I can't take stupid shit anymore. Story 18. A few bands announced tours that my ex-girlfriend likes. We're still somewhat cordial, so I let her know that these bands were coming to town. She replied and said, I'm kind of done with concerts anymore. I asked her why, and she said, I just don't care to go to concerts where there's constant cigarette and weed smoke. It gets hard to breathe. Smoking hasn't been allowed indoors at venues here for over 15 years, and she had been to concerts with me during that time where there was never any smoke inside. Story 19. From an 18-year-old female acquaintance I was giving a ride to. Upon spotting a fly tapped in the car, she asked, why don't flies get squashed against the back window when the car is driving on a freeway? We were in city traffic, but apparently that particular conundrum was weighing on her mind. She also questioned me at length as to why cars needed transmissions. I mansplained as best I could, but she couldn't even grasp the concept of air moving with the car, let alone torque curves. Plot twist. Her father taught college physics. I had him for 2 years, and he was a great teacher, even brilliant. Story 20. I had just finished my shift at the casino I worked for. A bunch of employees were on the shuttle bus to the employee parking lot. Several people were talking about how unfair it was that a fellow coworker had just been fired. He had cancer and had gone over his allotment of sick days and medical leave. This goofy woman was sitting in front of me. She turned around and said to me, and I quote, well, that just goes to show that if you value your job, you need to take better care of yourself. She was dead serious. Story 21. I was once told by someone very important to me shortly before they passed. I just want you to do the right thing. You know what's right and what's wrong. I just want you to do right. Every day since then, I have been trying to do just that. I just want to be a good person. Story 22. Guy I knew who was a habitual liar once tried telling a group of us that he went to UCLA and played on their hockey team, basketball team, and football team. We were like, bro, we're Canadian and we went to the same college as you. What are you even saying? We were just flabbergasted that he would even try to convince us of something that could just so easily be proven wrong. Story 23. Not said to only me, but to my sister, my mother, and I. My sister was dating some guy when she was maybe 19 or so. They broke up but remained friends. He went on to date another girl and get the girl pregnant. He and this girl then broke up not long after. And my sister, I believe, was sleeping with again. He was distraught that the girl he impregnated was dating other guys. This dude literally thought that the father of the baby could change if she slept with other men while pregnant. We were at a restaurant having lunch at the time, and I think our laughs caught every eye in the place. Story 24. A woman asked me for help with her computer because it wouldn't play a DVD. I had previously helped her with her iMac. When I arrived, I saw that she had jammed the DVD into an early model K-Pro portable, which came equipped with two 5.25 inches floppy drives. For the youngsters out there, the K-Pro is one of the earliest personal computers. It's ancient. They were made long before DVDs even existed. It was all I could do to remain polite and not slap my head at the sheer ignorance she displayed. Story 25. Math is pointless, and it doesn't add any value to society. Told to me by someone during my undergrad after they asked me what my major was. IDK, why you would ask that if you're going to respond in that type of way, but whatever. They were a marketing major. I guess coming up with unskippable advertisements to post online is more valuable to society than the mathematicians who made the internet itself possible. El Mao. Story 26. A friend of mine was smart about most things, brilliant mechanical engineer and programmer, but was brain dead about politics. He was pretty much exactly what you're imagining when you hear libertarian gold bug. One day, we got in an argument about whether or not privatizing the police was a good idea. He tried to convince me that if we privatized the police, there'd be no police brutality because rich people wouldn't hire firms that beat up poor people. I was pretty naive about these things at the time, 10 years before BLM protests. But even then, I knew that was the dumbest thing ever. But I couldn't quite explain why. Luckily, a bystander interrupted to explain to him that she's from Colombia, where they do have private police, and that rich people hire police specifically to beat up poor people. That's basically why police exist. In the US, we just pretend they serve a public good to trick people into paying for cops with their tax dollars. Dumbass learned nothing from the exchange, of course. If he was capable of learning, he wouldn't be a libertarian. Story 27. My husky does my. Aussie was from an abused home when she was only 6 WKs, so they say. So she didn't unfortunately understand anything. My husky actually got her to playing with toys and trying to pet the poor thing she would roll in a ball nose to tail and spend in circles around her hand. We tried for years so work with her on how to handle getting pettings, but it never worked. I told my husband she is happy with it. Just let it be. She will hopefully one day figure it out. Story 28. I'm currently down with a cold and remnants of walking pneumonia. The pneumonia triggered my first asthma attack in over 10 years, and having a cold right now has caused me to have multiple attacks since then. Unfortunately, I also learned that my asthma has become resistant to steroids. My father is a bit of a narcissist. This past weekend, he got annoyed with my constant coughing. He said to me in an annoyed tone of voice, "Have you ever tried taking deep breaths? It'll help you. I am having a fucking asthma attack, and my nose is stuffed up on top of that. I cannot breathe. Are you kidding me?" He also believes that humans can't get rabies. Story 29. Maybe not stupid, but so lacking in social filter it stunned me for a moment. I was waiting at a bus station one evening, and a man in a wheelchair approached me and started up a conversation. I'd seen him around before and observed his conversations with others when he was on the bus. Seemed like a nice enough guy. We made small talk for 5 or so minutes before he casually asks me, "So is it cerebral palsy that you've got?" For reference, I was about 22 at the time. A healthy weight, and no diagnosed health conditions. I just stared for a moment before replying with a stunned, "Nah, mate." Still not sure what prompted the comment, but it did give me a bit of a complex about the way I stand. Story 30. Probably that they were teaching their kid to say racist shit. I'm a very quiet person. Keep your mouth shut and look stupid rather than open in and prove if you know what I mean, but this was one instance where I had to speak up. I worked at a factory and listened to this fool daily during our lunch break. One day he's blathering on about NASCAR, etc. I'm not even kidding when I tell you that in 1999, this dude had a long, blonde, permed mullet and regularly talked about doing karate. He says my 2-year-old already knows. Last night he said I don't like N-word. I said, hell yeah, son. I literally said, that is the stupidest fucking thing I've ever heard another human being say. You know, kids aren't born racist. They're made racist. It was like he had been punched in the face. No one had ever called him on this stupid shit. They just sat and listened in agony. He was so visibly flustered and tried to take me to task. Well, who the fuck are you to tell me how to parent blah blah blah? I was like, dude, this is one instance where you're never gonna be right. Anyway, the bonus was he never talked or sat with me again. Saturday 31. Eating vegan is always better than eating non-vegan. I've seen my fair share of fat vegans who eat food that's based off of meat-flavored foods. I've seen vegans who eat garbage processed food who cling to the yes, but it's not animal-based, so it's 100% healthy. Vegan Gains on YouTube takes steroids and tries to make other people think he's built his physique from being vegan. The lies that many vegans tell are crazy. Story 32. I have MECFS, which is a neurological disorder that causes disabling fatigue, amongst other things. Exercise only makes it worse, and I'm not supposed to overdo it for that reason. If I have to go more than 100 foot or so, I need a wheelchair. Somebody once sneered at me and said, she shouldn't be in that wheelchair because she can still move her feet. Someone else asked me, a doctor no less, have you ever tried actually getting out and walking? Before I came down with the illness, I worked out 5 nights a week. I ran, rode, lifted weights, swam, and was training for the army. Story 33. I work at a place that has go-karts inside, and you have to be 14 years old and 54 inches to ride in the fast race. A couple of girls came up, and might I add this, one of them was blonde, but they wanted to do the fast race, and they said they're 14. They didn't look 14, so we asked them what their birthday is, and the brunette one says their birthday while the other says, and I quote, let me do the math. When asked again, she says that her parents never told her birthday. I'm standing there like, how do you know you're 14? We sent her back. Story 34. I'm a staunch defender of American intelligence, but last year I was strongly tested with the single most baffling conversation of my life. My sweet mate N was talking about her nail tech and ended a sentence with, she wasn't even Asian, she's Chinese. Her roommate M and I were absolutely stunned and started trying to explain how continents work. N ended up FaceTiming her hometown friend to prove that it wasn't just her, and asked her if she knew China was in Asia. The response, well, I guess, but I never really thought of it like that. How else were you thinking about it? Explanation of continents continues. N had mentioned before that she had German heritage, so I tried to explain how that means her family came from Europe. BCI assumed that she at least knew about Europe, right? Wrong. N is completely surprised. I'm European? She's still on FaceTime with her friend and immediately asks the friend if she's Asian. The friend is also white. She just has dark hair. Conversation Abbott heritage continues. I mention I'm Ashkenazi. OFCATP. There's absolutely no expectation that she'd know what that means, but I like talking about myself. Without missing a beat, N goes, you're from Auschwitz? Huh? Side note, when I told my dad about that, he said, well, a couple of my mom's cousins are, so that's how I learned that. Also, M is from Bulgaria, so she was quite excited to be encountering this legendary type of American. N is from Western Massachusetts. Thank you very much for watching. If you liked the video, like it. Be sure to write comments and share your stories.